Hi, this is Deboki, and today I am going to be doing the Future Classics tag. I first saw this video posted on Bree Hill's channel, and I loved her answers, and it just looked like a ton of fun. I feel like I haven't seen a tag video in a while where I've been like, wow, these are like questions I have like never thought about. I just thought I would do it. I wasn't tagged. It just seemed like fun. So the original tag is from Eric Carl Anderson, and I will link both to his video and Bree's video down below. And I will also have the questions listed down below as well. The premise of all these questions is to discuss books that you predict will become future classics. So the first question is pick an established classic that you think will still be relevant in the future. And I'm gonna go super basic with this. I think Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen will always be relevant. And I don't think it's just because like a lot of people love it now. I think it's just like there's something about the love-hate relationship that's kind of at the core of that book that I think has influenced so many romance novels and even just romantic subplots in books kind of down the road. I think there's sort of like Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet are just like these weird like duo patron saints of love-hate relationships. And I think a big part of that is that there's something very sincere about how they come to address each other's flaws and their own to like, you know, make a semi-functional couple. And obviously the books that she writes, they have these very specific settings. They have these very specific like cultural like rules to them that have not stuck around, but I think the core of that story is just something that has had so much influence as it is. I doubt it was the original love-hate relationship, but I feel like it's maybe the most famous one. And I think part of it is also that Jane Austen like figured out a way to write like an asshole male character who's not like actually an asshole. I feel like a lot of writers don't understand that. They think like asshole is like an endearing character trait in a guy, and that, you know, eventually the woman just has to like wear him down into being semi-decent to her, and that's like what love is. I think what I love about Pride and Prejudice is that Darcy changes on his own, like yes, in response to Elizabeth like calling him out, but also because he like internalizes that message and realizes that he like wants to change as well. So that's something that I think really sets this book apart. Anyway, that's a separate thing. Let's go back to the tag. The second question is pick a recent book which you feel has gone under the radar, but that you feel confident will be a classic in the future. I don't know if I feel confident that this will be a classic, but I want to put this into the universe because I think it should become a classic. And this is Jane Unlimited by Kristin Cashore. This book was published last year. I said it was my favorite book of last year. I am still in love with this book. I think it's like such a well-written and weird, but like also universally like kind of applicable book. I will link to my full review of this book below because I'm not going to be able to fully do it justice in this tag. So if you are remotely intrigued, please check out that review, and please check out that book because I think it is so good. Jane Unlimited is about Jane, who is a recent, I think, high school grad. She's at this like weird crossroads in her life. She's very unsure about what she wants to do, and her beloved aunt who's been raising her has just passed away. So she's just very kind of lost and confused. And her super rich friend, who's like not just super rich, she's like obscenely rich to the point that her family like basically has an island and a house that like has its own name. Her friend is like, you're gonna go to my house and we're gonna like celebrate this ball together. And Jane doesn't know much about this house, but her aunt had told her when she was alive that like, if you ever get invited to this house, like you gotta go. So now that she has the invitation, she goes, and like after that, it's kind of weird. Like she basically is drawn into different kind of versions of her life. That's kind of the only way I can describe it at this point. Like I said in my review, and I think like the author herself said, she started out writing this book as a choose your own adventure story, and it definitely has that feeling. But I think that what she's telling is a story that is so universal about like being at a crossroads, being really unsure about what you're doing, and feeling like kind of that sense of dread that you're about to make the wrong decision. And the book kind of approaches that in such a unique, creative way that I think it should be a classic. I think Kristin Cashore's Graceling series has sort of this like maybe cult feminist kind of classic sense to them, and I think this book also needs to become some kind of like YA classic because I think it's just so perfect for anyone going through any kind of transition in their life, and it's just so well written. Again, I think I'm more just kind of wishing this. I don't know if it has like the makings of a classic. I don't know if it falls into books that should be a classic, but I think it should be. Number 3, pick a title that won one of your favorite book prizes recently which you think will still be lauded in 50 years time. I don't really have a favorite book Prize. So I just kind of looked up some awards that I think I like kind of loosely like follow, and I decided to pick Miss Marvel Volume 1 by G. Willow Wilson, which won the Hugo Award in 2015 for Best Graphic Story. So Miss Marvel is, of course, G. Willow Wilson's amazing comic book series about Miss Marvel. And this is an update on the Miss Marvel story. She is now a young Pakistani girl growing up in America who develops superpowers in all the usual silly ways. And the reason why this comic book is going to be lauded is both because it's really, really good. Both the writing and the art is amazing. The art is beautiful. Like, if you want a comic book that's just gonna like make you happy when you look at it, just go through it. But also, I think it's going to be lauded for what it represents. And I don't say that as if that's shortchanging what it's done like as a story. I think it's really important. It's part of why I was so excited for the book. I'm not Pakistani, but I'm Indian, and for me, like, having some kind of brown girl superhero, like, it was super exciting. And I think that's something that we're going to remember. Like, that was something that was exciting about the book when it came out, and then what made it even better is that the book was so good. Number 4, pick a recent book you haven't read yet, but which you think might become a classic based on reputation alone. And for this, I am picking I Contain Multitudes by Ed Yong. So Ed Yong is a science writer. He's one of my favorite science writers, and I Contain Multitudes is his book about basically bacterial colonies that live inside like all of the rest of us, like in humanity, that are not bacteria. So there are a few reasons that I think this book is going to become a classic. For one, it has had really, really good reviews. I think Bill Gates also was like really excited about it and had a whole conversation with Ed Yong about it. The microbiome, like these huge bacterial colonies that live inside of us, that's a huge kind of conversation going on in science right now. So I think he's writing this book really at the onset of this really exciting field, and that's kind of figuring out what it is. So I think topic-wise, it has the potential for like a really long-lasting impact in informing people about this huge field of science that changes the way we think about our bodies. And on top of that, I also think that Ed Yong himself is a really good science writer. He's actually one of my favorite science writers because he has this really beautiful, elegant style that's very distinctive, but also very approachable, very welcoming. I find his titles, like, I feel like you can kind of pick out an Ed Yong titled science article just because a lot of them just have this very like beautiful kind of flow to them. And I assume that that's on display in this book as well. I think people will just kind of remember his writing overall, the way that people are like familiar with certain science writers like, I don't know, Carl Sagan or like Oliver Sacks. Like, I think he just has such a distinctive style, and it's such a great choice in the topics that he's covering that there's like a lot of longevity to it. And for the last one, pick a favorite book that you want to save for your grandchildren to read in 50 years time. Like, let's get the obvious out of the way, like Harry Potter, of course. I am one of those people who really liked Harry Potter and will force my children to hear me tell them the story of Harry Potter when they're kids, and I'll probably make them tell their grandchildren the story when they're kids. My second answer though is probably kind of a sign of like what my hypothetical children and grandchildren are in for, which is like, they're in for a lot of like me trying to teach them things. This book is The Making of Asian America by Erika Lee. And I have talked about this book a lot on my channel. I love this book. I highly recommend it. It is a nonfiction book about the history of immigration to the US from various different Asian countries. It was such an important book for me to read. I think I read it like in 2016, maybe 2015. It's had a huge impact on like how I view my place in this country, and for why I would force my children or grandchildren to read it. Over the past like few months, I've been developing this really specific anxiety. When I see people being like anti-immigrant or xenophobic, it's like they're forgetting that, especially, you know, if they're of a certain demographic, that they were probably also descended from immigrants. And I have been developing this anxiety around this idea that like, what if like several generations down the road, there are kids in like my descendant line who also forget that. So like my husband and I, both of our sets of parents immigrated to the US. His immigrated from Hong Kong, my parents immigrated from India. So like our kids are already gonna have this like mixed, you know, heritage, they're gonna be mixed race. So there's like already like things that they're going to be learning to adjust to. And so I think they will probably have hopefully some sense of like what it means for their grandparents to have been immigrants. But I'm like worried like, you know, further down the line when, you know, they're further removed from this origin, like that they're going to forget why immigration is important and how it shapes their experience in the US. And you know, immigration history is not really well taught in schools. Asian American history is definitely not well taught in schools. Like I've said, this book is the first time that I really had a sense of kind of like my own personal history in America. And I just want future generations to understand that. That's my like heavy-handed, like you're gonna learn shit, like your grandma's gonna make you sit down and learn some stuff kind of answer. It's probably why they're gonna hate me, but that's okay. My husband will be the fun grandparent, so that'll be fun for him. So yeah, those are my answers for the Future Classics tag. Like I said, I have links to the original video and Brie Hill's video down below, along with questions. So if you're interested in doing this tag, definitely do it. I thought it was really fun to do. Thank you for watching, and bye.